This is in Boston, 1971, and he came to the temple and he gave a short address speech. He sat on the Vyasa-san in the back of the temple, and then we brought him into this one room that we had fixed for Srila Prabhupada to use while he stayed there. And it was just a small room, maybe like 10 foot by 12 foot. And he just, a few like greetings and stuff, didn't say much. But because it was late, Satsrup Maharaj said that, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, it's late, and we've rented a hotel room for you." And Srila Prabhupada, his eyes just got really big. And he said, "Hotel?" He said, "I'm not going." And he quoted a verse, and he said, how do you say it? He said, "The country is in the mode of goodness, the city is in the mode of passion, but a hotel is simply a brothel." He said, "I'm not going." He said, "But the temple is Vaikuntha. I'll stay here." And he did. The 2.5 days that he was in Boston, he just stayed in this one room, real simple room. And he was, just so happy to stay there instead of going someplace else. And of course, as devotees, we loved it that he was there, staying with us for that time. And this one older gentleman had convinced, Satsrup that the temple wasn't good enough for Srila Prabhupada to stay in. And he rented actually the best hotel in Boston, the Four Seasons Hotel, the penthouse suite, and he paid for it. But Prabhupada didn't go there. When he called me up for initiation, this is in Boston, 71, and he said, "How many rounds do you chant?" And I said, 16. "And what are the 4 regulative principles?" I said them, and I can remember just being so nervous and didn't want to, I was really glad I remembered the right things to say, And I was just kneeling at him. I'm not kneeling at him, but kneeling in front of him, kind of looking at the floor. And he said, "So your name is Soma Das." And he said, "Soma? Soma means the moon." And when he said that, I said, "The moon? Is he chastising me, or is he making fun of me, or what?" I thought we were supposed to get names of Krishna Das, or something related to Krishna. What, the moon? So I looked up, and I looked into Srila Prabhupada's eyes, because I was just kind of bewildered, and it seemed like a long time, it's just kind of looking into his eyes, but it was, it was like he could see my soul, he could just completely see right through me. And all of a sudden he just had this big smile, and it just lit up the whole room. And he goes, "You are moon-like." And then of course everybody goes, "Jai." And so then I paid my obeisances and went to sit down, and the very next devotee, my godbrother Sudas, was next, and the same drill. What are the 16 rounds? How many rounds do you chant? What are the 4 regulative principles? And he said, "Okay," and of course he has your beads there that he had chanted on, and he said, "So your name is Sudas. Sudas means very nice servant of Krishna. Do you understand?" And he's handing him his beads, and Sudas said, "No." And Prabhupada took the beads back, and he said, "Do you want to be or don't you?" And of course he smiled, and Suda said, "Yeah." And he gave him the beads. But it was, Prabhupada was joking with him, and it was very humorous. This was only a few hours after I had been initiated, and such a wonderful experience. Srila Prabhupada accepted all my karma. He accepted me as his disciple. I had a new name. I was ecstatic, And because Srila Prabhupada stayed in the temple room, in the temple building, there was only 2 bathrooms, and the men's bathroom, they said nobody else can use this. This is for Prabhupada's personal use only. So we had to share the women's bathroom, the men and the women, the time that he was there. So only a few hours after my initiation, I was waiting in the hallway to use the bathroom because some Matajis were in there, and me and Petita Durant were standing in the hallway, and it just so happened that we were right in front of Srila Prabhupada's door, where the room that he was staying. And we were just waiting, and all of a sudden the door opens, and Srila Prabhupada comes out, just in his gamcha. And Petit, who's my older godbrother, he just yelled loud. He said, "Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada!" And he threw his hands up in the air. The hallway's only about this wide. And, Prabhupada's right there, and he really yelled and threw his hands up, "Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada!" And then paid full dandavats in the hallway. And Prabhupada could barely walk by, but I also paid my dandavats, to follow his example. And Prabhupada just walked, like 10 feet down the hall and into the bathroom. And we got up after paying our obeisances, and we just looked at each other and thought, yeah, wow, that was really sweet, Prabhupada, just, coming out like that. And Srila Prabhupada was only in the bathroom maybe 30 seconds, and he comes back out. And again, Petit, really loud, "Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada!" Throws his hands up in the air, and then full dandavats. So I also paid my obeisances there too. And this time, when we stood up, Prabhupada was just standing there right in front of us, looking at both of us. And it's really like one of my favorite remembrances of Srila Prabhupada, because I had just been initiated, and here Srila Prabhupada is standing in the hallway, in his gamcha, and the expression on his face was just so incredible. It was like he was like a little kid. He was like almost a little embarrassed, from Petit yelling like this. And he had this, very beautiful, compassionate smile that just really like melted you. He had like so much compassion and love, and all of a sudden to be that close and intimate, with Srila Prabhupada like that, my heart just kind of wanted to, surrender to him and dedicate my life to helping him. Srila Prabhupada looked in this Mataji Gopa, who lives in New Vrindavan. She was, just there in her sari, and it was a little, chilly in the evening. And Srila Prabhupada asked her, he said, "Are you okay? Are you warm enough?" And she was like, so shy, she didn't say anything. And then Kaladri started to say, "Well, she's just happy to be here, Prabhupada." And Prabhupada said, "No." He said, "You should make sure that these women are taken care of." He said, "You should ask at least once a month if they need anything. And you have to make sure that you're protecting them and that you take care of them." And, it was just another example how Prabhupada was very concerned and compassionate. We were taking care of the woman and making sure that they had everything. He even said that he said, they're shy, they won't ask, so you have to make sure and ask and make sure that they have everything they need. When I was a new devotee in Boston, and ISKCON Press was there, Satsvarup, and all these old devotees. And I used to really like the stories that they would tell, especially Satsvarup would tell these stories when Prabhupada was first, opening up ISKCON in New York, about how Prabhupada was very inquisitive about things. And I thought, wow, that'd be really kind of nice to be able to, offer Srila Prabhupada some information that he wanted. And for some reason, I just, I had that, in me. So on this morning walk in New Vrindavan, we were walking along, and all of a sudden a calf walked down in front of where Srila Prabhupada was walking. And Srila Prabhupada, put his cane in the ground, and he stopped. And he said, "How old is that calf?" And because I was like right next to him, I distinctly heard him say, "How old is that calf?" So I used to work in the barn. I was, one of the cowherd boys, but at that point, I hadn't worked in the barn for like 2 or 3 years. So I looked around to see if any of the other cowherd boys were there who would know, exactly how old the calf was. But nobody was around. So I looked at the calf, like really hard to see if I could figure out how old it was, and I could see that, the milk bag was still up, that it, hadn't dropped down yet. So I said, "Well, it's very young, Srila Prabhupada, because the milk bag hasn't dropped down, And Srila Prabhupada looked at me and he said, I know that. And when he said that, I just thought, oh my God, I'm such a fool. Why did I ever have that, desire that I could, offer Srila Prabhupada something, some information. He already knows that. And so I kind of felt kind of bad, and I kind of went to the back. I kind of slipped to the back of the walk as the other people were walking forward. And, anyways, I felt a little bad about that. So the very next day, he, would give the morning program down at Bahulaban in New Vrindavan. And then after his Bhagavatam class, he would walk out to his car, and he'd usually get into the car and drive to where he was living. So this time, he walked out to his car. They're having like a little kirtan as he walks, and then somebody opened up the door for him to get into the car. But he didn't get into the car. He just looked over the top of the car across the road to the field that was there. And I was like standing, right there, right next to him. And he turned around and he had this little smile on his face. And he looked at me and he said, "What's growing over there?" And I happened to know that they had planted mung beans there. So I said, "Oh, those are mung beans, Srila Prabhupada." And he said, "Oh, thank you very much." And then he got in the car. And I couldn't believe it. I was ecstatic. I couldn't believe how he read my mind, and he knew that I wanted to, answer one of his questions like that, and he gave me another chance. And, he drove off, and I was just, for days, I was like, I couldn't believe he did that. I couldn't believe he actually asked me another question, and this time I knew the answer. But it was so endearing, and just such a little thing, but it just made my life, so to speak. It was near the end of the darshan, and my godbrother Taru asked a question, and he said, "Srila Prabhupada, when we talk to the farmers around New Vrindavan and tell them about Krishna, they say that they don't have time to worship God. They're just too busy. They work too hard. They don't have time." And Prabhupada was just sitting there, listening, and Dristadumna was on one side with a chamara whisk, whisking Prabhupada, and Pusta Krishna had a peacock fan, and he was on the other side. So Prabhupada just said, "Pusta Krishna, you answer." So he was, still fanning. And he said, "Well, it says in the Bhagavad-gita," and Prabhupada's arm goes out, he goes, "Don't bring the Gita." And everybody was like shocked. It was like silence. And then he goes, "Dristadumna, you answer." And Dristadumna, the chamara whisk, he thought for a few seconds, and he said, "Well, Krishna says," and Prabhupada throws his hand out, "Don't bring Krishna." And it was like, you could hear a pin drop. It was complete silence. It was so dramatic. Nobody knew what was going to happen, and Prabhupada leans forward in the Vyasasana and he goes, "Okay, rascal, can you make it rain? Can you make the sun shine? Can you make the crops grow?" And I don't remember the exact words, but it was just how the simple thing of, Krishna's providing everything, and it's just worshiping Krishna is just being grateful. You can't do all these things, but without bringing in, any of the scriptures and stuff, just, explained it on such a simple level of, just be grateful for what God is giving you. That's, worshiping Krishna. Just be grateful. So this was on a morning walk in New Vrindavan, and we had some kshatriyas. They, supposed to be, protectors of the devotees and stuff there. And they were on the morning walk, and one of them asked Srila Prabhupada the question that, is it all right to kill some of the rabbits and the groundhogs because they're eating the produce in Krishna's garden. So, they're stealing from the deities and the devotees. Is it already if we kill them? And Prabhupada was like disturbed. He said no. He said you should grow enough so that they can eat too. And he was like, visibly, he was very, very concerned that no, you shouldn't kill them. Srila Prabhupada came with his car, and there was one other car that came with him. And he got out of the car and he started walking through the palace, and Kirtananda was showing him different things. But it was just a dirt floor, just no roof, just really a construction site, some bare concrete blocks. And Srila Prabhupada was like poking the concrete blocks with his cane. We had this door jamb. He'd be poking it with his cane. Just seeing how sturdy it was and stuff. And there was a pallet with bags of cement with plastic over it. And he said, "What is this?" And they said, "Those are just bags of concrete." And he said, "This is not right." And we were thinking, covered with plastic, there's no roof anywhere, what else can you do? And it wasn't until like a few days after Srila Prabhupada left and we needed to use some of it, that when we opened it up, we noticed that when it had rained, some of the water had gotten through the plastic and it had ruined some of the bags. But Prabhupada was so perceptive that he pointed it out, just from seeing it like that. And right after that, then he started to walk out of the palace. And Bali Mardan was there, and he said, "Srila Prabhupada, it says in the Krishna book that Krishna's palaces in Dwarka, they were illuminated with the jewels on the wall." And Prabhupada stopped, and he lifted his cane, and he waved it at the devotees that were there, and he said, "These devotees are my jewels." Je anilo